Hello and welcome to Chai Chat and Community. I'm your host Oz Malik, and we are talking about a very, very important topic that has come up in the community, unfortunately. If you haven't heard, Miss Universe Australia, Maria, has unfortunately gone through an incident online where she was in a group chat where she saw a lot of sexist and misogynistic comments. And she brought this up through her bravery. And this brought a lot of attention about these so-called boys clubs online and the sexism that goes on in these spaces. So just wanted to talk about this. We always say, it's time to have a discussion. And here on Chai Chat Community, we're about to discuss this very important topic. And we also want to acknowledge the women who have come out and spoken up in recent days as well from Maria's stories. So before we get into the discussion, I'd like to introduce these amazing guests who are really passionate about this topic. We have Sameera, Jagesh, and Tina. So they'll introduce themselves and then we'll get into the discussion. Hello, Sameera.
Hi, Oz. Thanks for having me. My name is Sameera Singh. I work in local government as a continuous improvement specialist. I am very passionate about feminism and topics like online misogyny and ways of unpacking it, especially with the South Asian community. Part of it is also unlearning a lot of maybe misogyny that I may carry as a South Asian myself. So for me, this is a fantastic topic and also a great learning opportunity. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We also have Tina here as well. Hi, Tina.
Hi, Oz. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Tina Chakraborty. So I'm a British-born Indian. So I moved to Melbourne. I've been here for 10 years now. I'm a mum and I also work in the pharma industry.
Well, unfortunately, we've lost Tina, but we have also Chris here who will be filling in for Tina. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Oz, and hi, everyone. So I'm all right. We have Tina in, so Tina, you can carry on.
Sorry, guys, I've got terrible connection. Yeah, so this when Salhanti approached me about this topic, I thought it was really relevant. Actually, being a mum of a girl, of the millennial generation, she's Generation Z now. So this is really important for me because I would want my daughter to grow up feeling confident, feel brave enough to actually be able to call any form of discrimination and not have to sort of feel afraid or scared. So, and within the South Asian community growing up as an Indian as well, across 3 countries, I've lived in.
Well, unfortunately, again, some technical issues, but that will happen and that's okay. We'll hopefully get Tina back. Chris, can you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks, Oz, for having me. Probably as a student. So I moved to Melbourne in 2013 for my PhD. Graduated and I'm associated with the research industry. I am the host of a podcast myself, and I also talk about these issues which affect the South Asian community by far and large. I'm passionate about them because I feel if no one talks about them right now, then who will? We have to bell the cat at one point of time. So that is why I'm so closely attached to many other topics apart from this one thing. So thank you for having me again.
Great, thank you. And we also have Jagesh. Hi, Jagesh.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, and hello to everyone as well. My name is Jagesh, founder of Shakti Mental Health Melbourne. We discuss mental health in the South Asian Australian community, and in recent times, in the past as well, brown men misogyny has been something that's come up quite a lot. And from Shakti's perspective, we're here to make sure that's something that just doesn't keep continuing. So here to talk about the conversation and work with communities to make sure brown men and the South Asian diaspora take accountability, and we can work together to solve those issues.
Awesome. Thanks so much for those introductions. And I would also like to acknowledge the land that I'm coming from, and that if you would like as well to acknowledge that in the chat, I'm on Bunurong and Wurundjeri land, and I pay my respects to the Indigenous people of this land. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So getting onto the discussion, when I first heard about this, I was quite shocked, but in another way, I know this happens. And that was very unfortunate for me, because this is an unfortunate trend that is happening, but it's also this idea of, you know, the boys club and locker room talk. But this is happening more and more online. And I want to just go around the group and get your thoughts on, you know, what was your initial reaction when you heard Maria's, Instagram story where she talked about the sexism and misogyny that was happening in this boys group chat. We'll start off with, Jagesh, if you'd like to start off first.
Yeah, for sure. It was like, when I saw it, I was shocked, but at the same time, wasn't surprised, which is really upsetting to say, because what we haven't got to is why this is still happening in the first place. And a lot of the actions I know we're doing it's reactive and not proactive. So it's only when something like this happens do we talk about it and we need to do something. Why is it not that before this action occurred, what could we have done so that group chat never started in the first place? So we need to start thinking about proactive solutions so that brown men understand that it's not cool to start these group chats, and we need to start thinking of ways where we're lifting up our sisters as well, because it's something that it just keeps going no matter what we keep trying to do. It just feels like the next generation still has this issue that we always keep discussing.
Yeah, unfortunately. Sameera?
Similar to Jagesh, I wasn't surprised, unfortunately. I think it was disappointing. I thought Maria and the other girls that came out were extremely brave, because it is very difficult to call out misogyny these days online, especially with the kind of backlash that you get. And for me, what I do want to talk about is the actual backlash and the commentary that followed about men's mental health or women using platforms like OnlyFans. So completely irrelevant sort of streams of conversations that were kind of embedded into this to try and dilute almost what was happening without focusing on the actual problem that young, impressionable South Asian men are indulging in really highly sexual conversations about women. And that's a huge issue about how women are being portrayed in these communities. So yeah, for me, like I said, very not surprising, but disappointing. And from that, the reaction was even more disappointing.
Well, that's the thing, Sameera. You touched on an important point there about the kind of this backlash that happened. Where is that kind of balance or fine line? Or people, will, playing devil's advocate here, people will say, well, she's Miss Universe Australia and she's a pageant queen, and we live in a sexualized society, and women put themselves out there. So why can't I speak like this? What would you say to people like that, that this is an appropriate response? Or if it's not consensual, what is the conversation around that?
I think you've hit the point about consensual. So yes, I do agree to an extent that we live in a sexualized kind of world with, if you look at South Asia specifically, your Bollywood item number culture is extremely sexualized. However, things like pageants, or even if you think about OnlyFans, women are consenting to do this. Women who are fashion models on Instagram, someone like a Komal Pandey who's very confident in her own body. Women like that who are, for want of better words, showing their body. Those are done with choices in safe spaces that they're to their audiences. So I actually think that kind of, I guess, talking about how it's all sexualized, you're again straying the conversation. You're diluting it with bringing up irrelevant things, and And I don't actually agree with that. I don't think that it's appropriate to bring those sort of concepts up, especially when you're talking about behaviours where you are sexualizing women like that and they haven't consented to it. You are not their audience when they are presenting themselves on social media. You're just basically sexualizing them without their consent and knowledge.
Yeah. Tina, you're agreeing there with that in terms of agency of women and the right to consent, and then versus, not consenting and then information being spread. So apparently what was happening on these group chats were photos, sexist comments, toxic masculinity. Some of the terms used against women were quite misogynistic. So I'd love to get your thoughts and reaction on that as well.
Yeah, so like I said, I've only been in Melbourne for 10 years, and like Jagesh said, I wasn't surprised. It's if you actually Google, you will see so many articles online about locker room talk, as you've mentioned, in Melbourne, being a Melburnian now. And it is disappointing, but I think the question I have as well is like, where do we set the standard to say that it's enough? And what is being done to sort of rectify and correct this behavior, and where is it stemming from? And as Sameera said, these women made a choice, and if it's their choice, they should be allowed to make those choices. However, if someone is perceiving them in a separate way to whatever they feel, like you say, sexualizing them because they're walking in a bikini or in a swimsuit or in an outfit that they might find derogative, it's still up to that pageant queen or to that individual to make that choice in what she is wearing and what she wants to wear. It's not our position, or I don't feel we're in a position to tell someone how someone should dress, how someone should look, how someone should talk. Everyone's got their entitlement and their choices at the end of the day. And I think it's really relevant, and I'm really happy and very grateful that I've been able to come on this platform actually today and talk about this before I got cut off thanks to technology. Just wanting to bring back that I think, being a woman of this generation, millennial generation, and having a young daughter, I really would, just coming back to that point, would want her to, if she ever came across or had ever encounters this in the future, that she can actually call it out, and she's brave enough to call it out and correct it and say that was not cool and that should not have been said. Because I think until someone actually takes that stand, it doesn't have to be a woman, it could be a man, or it could be someone in the group to say that, guys, like, this isn't the way we should be talking about women or girls or, people in general, like it's incorrect, it's wrong, then that is changing the whole dynamics and the role play of that particular situation. I hope you guys sort of understand where I'm getting at with that, but yeah, I would love to hear what the others have to say as well. I'm sorry if I've missed anything when you got cut off.
No, that's a great answer, and it's really important to hear from a parent's experience as well and your concern. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Jagesh. I wanted you to, if you could, for those people who may be listening, what is happening right now on the online spaces? What are we actually seeing, especially with young men? Could you give a bit more context to that, please?
Yeah, I think that it's unfortunately it's quite common that men make these groups, and the thing about them is that they are private. So unless something like comes out in the public or you tell someone else, you don't know about it until it's too late, right? So I think a lot of young men, especially from a South Asian background, a South Asian diaspora, is they're not, they haven't always grown up knowing what's wrong and what's right. But saying that as well, it's not good enough anymore for men to say, well, I didn't know any better. Because we're at this time and generation now where you should know better, and you should know, regardless of what other people have told you, that making these lewd comments, sharing unsolicited pics, it's something that really has to stop. And what Tina said before, just on the opposite, where she said like her daughter now knows like when to like call out someone. On the opposite, I've seen so much discussion about women allies in the South Asian community condemning a lot of these actions, but I think the point we're missing here is that men have been super silent on this. And if there's men that have spoken up, that's amazing. But what I've seen online is men have not come out and said, this is wrong, we need to do something about it. So the people that are fault here are South Asian men. It's the brown community, it's brown men. We need to do better and start raising our voices, start being allies, instead of keeping quiet about it. So, for example, if you're in one of these chats, you may not be complicit in like saying comments, but if you're ignoring it, you're just as much as fault as the person like sharing messages too.
Yeah.
So you need to be the ones to say, hey guys, this isn't cool. I'm going to leave this group, and you guys should have a serious talk about like disbanding this chat altogether. It's only when discussions like that come across that community and young men from a South Asian background or the South Asian diaspora will start to understand that, all right, this is actually not cool. Like, you know, my mate just told me this isn't cool. Maybe we should start doing something about it.
I also, maybe if I can jump in there, I also feel maybe men don't feel safe to call it out in those groups of their friends.
Say that as well.
They're scared. There is that fear that they'll be treated differently or kicked out of those groups, and you know, there is that sort of you know, if I'm silent, I'm not complicit kind of mindset where, you know, and to be honest, a lot of migrant children are also taught not to cause a stir. You're taught to just quietly achieve, quietly do things. You know, because we've watched our parents do it. They've come here, they've struggled, they've achieved. So we need to go out there and we just need to achieve. We need to just be quiet and not cause a stir. And maybe these things are, you know, men, for instance, South Asian men pick up on that a lot more, perhaps.
Just quickly on that as well, like I think that thing of being taught not to cause a stir, I think that, like personally, I think that's when it comes to like authority. So when it's like your teachers or like someone in government or like police, for example. But when it's your mates, and if it's your close mates, I think this is where we need to stand up, and especially men say like to our mates as well, like that's not cool. Why are you doing that? Or why do you keep talking like those behaviors towards women? So if they really are your mates, they're gonna like, they might be like, yeah, okay, I get your point, and they should be the ones who understand you. Like as well, like I've got mates as well, we talk a lot about things we really disagree on, but there's always that space where if you want to disagree on something, you should stand up and say it, because at the end of the day, if they're truly your guys, they're truly your mates, they're going to be like, cool, I really hear your point, I'm going to take that on board now. So this whole thing of why we aren't afraid, we should really stop being afraid and start calling out a bit more.
Agreed.
We've got a question from Mehek, and thank you for listening, Mehek. How do group chats like this even emerge? Tina, would you like to tackle that one?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I would love to know as well.
I guess I can like comment a bit. Like with this, it's like both genders can do it, right? So it's not just men. People can start a Facebook Messenger chain or an Instagram Messenger chain, even an email chain with mates they know. And the thing is, you don't even have to consent to it. You can just add your name and then add a picture. That's the thing that it's really easy, which is quite upsetting. At the same time, though, it's really easy to leave those chats too. So when Mehek said, how do these even emerge? It's really easy that it emerges, which is really upsetting too. There's nothing that, you know, on Facebook, there's nothing that says, would you like to be part of this chat? Once you're in it, and it's only when someone shared something, then maybe you realize and be like, oh, I didn't even know I was part of this. Then it's up to you to leave the group and say something about it. And you can do that, like that's through WhatsApp, email, Facebook, Snapchat, and everything. So creating these private groups, it's something that's really consistent and really easy to do, which is also on the downside, something that is really hard to control.
Yeah, it's one of those things as well where we also find that young men haven't used their skills from the outside world on the digital space, like anonymity, but also you're seeing young men say things on these group chats that they wouldn't really say in real life as well. And I think that's where the problem is, that this frankness that happens on this group chat, but then on the outside world, completely different. And I think the silence Jagesh pointed out to of young South Asian men is, and in the past I think I've been guilty of this as well, is it's pretty hip to seem like you're open-minded and liberal or pro-feminist, but then how you speak, that's a really important point, Jagesh. Sameera, I wanted to move this discussion on to and I know it's a very difficult topic to talk about, especially as a woman, but sexism and online misogyny, where do you think this stems from? And I know it's not for you to speak, but I know we've spoken before about the role of parents and
yes,
men.
yes.
Can you please touch on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, when I think about this more broadly, for me, all of it starts at home. So I know that, nowadays, like Jagesh pointed out, nowadays things like sexism shouldn't actually be happening because we're all sort of talking a lot about respecting women. We're raising awareness about mental health, and we're raising awareness about sexism and misogyny in the community and in online spaces. And I think, however, what we're missing is that, yes, there is that overall broad messaging around, yes, there needs to be more respect for women in these spaces. We're more aware of what is misogyny and what is, say, sexism. However, I don't think it's being unpacked properly in families. I don't think that children and parents are having those honest discussions of what does it actually mean to respect women. Are we, because in a lot of families, there's still, gossip about women who are not conforming, that cousin whose skirt is too short, or the cousin that didn't marry into the community, or that auntie that never got married and none of the other aunties and uncles want to mix with her because, she's unmarried, it doesn't have kids, and she's not conforming, essentially, and the gossip and rumor mills around that. So even though part of us are sort of talking about how it's important to respect women, how it's important to call out misogyny and sexism, the actual dialogues at homes and the actual actions that are happening are not consistent. So I feel like for me, I've had to call it out in my own family. So change begins at home. All of this that we're talking about can only be rectified when we look within and go, what is it? What are the agencies closest to me that are impacting and making me behave this way? So yeah, for me, it's definitely it all begins
key,
at home. And how we sort of, how we're unpacking what it means. Sorry, Tina. There you go.
No, I completely agree with the concept of environment and how it impacts how this behavior actually arises, like what is going on at home. But look, you can have strong values at home where the respect is there, like equality, a bit of feminism where everyone's equal. Let's, just let's say hypothetically, it's being demonstrated. But then as, children get older, environments, groups change, peers change, you go through school. Let's say if you do attend school, you go through university, if you attend university, or whatever short courses you may want to do, and then you get into workforce. And in these environments, there might be that one person who triggers that conversation and is rubbing shoulders with everyone, and it's a bit of macho-ness, and I think it's a bit like you say, the toxic masculinity is definitely there. They want to look cool, they want to feel accepted, so they might just conform to that is what is seen as the norm. It may we may not agree with it, like I certainly wouldn't. I would like to think I'm sort of strong enough in myself, if I don't agree to something, to speak up and say that I don't agree with this. This is not the way I'd like to carry on. But like you say, coming from an Asian community, for a long time, I think we've been told to be subservient, just to ride with it, just it under the rug. Yes, it's there, we accept it, but let's just look away. And how much of that can we do? Let's be honest, right? There has to be some form of change that needs to occur, and I think we can learn from the older generation or the generations above us, and I think the generations can also learn from us, and that's where the change is actually beginning to come. And I think home is the one thing that a lot of people, like the friends and peers who I've contacted and spoken to about this, have said that that's where it needs to come from. Like the change needs to be seen there first before it can actually leave the four walls of the home.
Yeah, some great points there. Asmita agrees here. Absolutely, starts at home. Jagesh, if if there are young men listening out there, what advice would you give them, or not even advice, actually, feedback, in terms of if they're in a situation where they've broken up with their girlfriend and they have, whether it's personal photos of their girlfriend, and they're thinking about sharing it in terms of revenge in their group chat, or if they're thinking of trying to blackmail. What are some cutthroat advice you could give to these guys of why this is wrong?
Like plain and simple, just don't do it. Like the repercussions that you're going to face, and just the reasoning why. What's the reasoning behind doing it? If you're sharing like photos that you don't have consent for from like an ex-partner or even from your current partner, you can get into massive trouble for that as well. Not from just a legal standpoint, but from a moral standpoint as well. You're probably going to have your mates that aren't going to be your friends anymore. Going forward as well, even if it's in a workplace, with your professional career, there's so many things to not doing it. So I think it's just a clean slate. Like, don't take part in this behavior, because one way or another, what I always try and get back to guys is that you're going to get found out, or you're going to get what's coming to you as well. So if you're sharing these pictures and you don't have consent for it, it's something that's just going to hurt you in the long run. So advice to guys, or just like cutthroat advice, is like, just don't be a dick. Like, be a decent person.
Be dignified.
Really, be dignified. Exactly.
Be dignified. Accept it.
Just kind of on this quickly as well. What is like kind of harsh, but think about if this was you, and you saw a picture of your daughter out there as a man. What would you think about it? How do you think? What would you like that to be shared? What kind of like emotions would that instill in you if you saw that somewhere and you knew your daughter or someone close to you didn't consent for that photo to be shared?
I think a couple of things there. I would like to think that men can think about women with disassociating them from that whole daughter sister thing as well, because I just feel like a lot of the times people share it because they know that even though they might get into trouble, the onus and the shame is carried by the woman whose picture has been distributed without her knowledge. And she will get into maybe double the amounts of trouble, because if she's South Asian, it means, you know, her family's going to find out. It's going to have impacts on people who know her family. And then that whole thing of who's going to marry you, who's going to want to be with you, and then the shame that comes with. And in this space, I've also seen that people make a lot of excuses for men in this space by, you know, kind of putting the blame on women, saying, well, why would you be in a compromising state? So we're completely lacking this whole idea of it was actually consensual and it was a private, intimate thing between two consenting adults. And revenge porn is illegal. Like, that's completely illegal, distributing it without that person's consent. So yes, the male will get into trouble, but a lot of the times I think men do know that they're going to get into trouble. It's just, it will shame the woman even more. So hence, it's a great revenge tool, and it will sit with her for the rest of her life, because people may forget in 10 years that this man may have, you know, sent a couple of WhatsApps, but they're going to remember forever that that girl had naked pictures sent to her friends and cousins or whoever. So yeah, I just think that women bear the bigger brunt of this, and the consequences, we just keep making excuses for men in this space, unfortunately.
That's some excellent points. We're getting some good questions here, Swati. Thank you for listening. This is just part of a problematic culture the diaspora has created. It privileges men and instills fear in women and girls. Thanks to Sameera for bringing the convo back to the fact it starts at home. So bringing up that idea of, you know, the consequences that happen for women as well, the home life. Tina, you know, it sounds like in the South Asian community in particular, women bear the brunt much more. And we've got to teach our young men. Would you like to share some thoughts on what Swati said here as well?
Yeah, I actually absolutely agree with what Sameera is saying. It's actually quite sad, though, when you think about it, that it is actually happening like that. It's an interesting question as well. I often think, like,
does it also come down to that perhaps we need to sort of understand, we're all equal in our own way. I'm not trying to go on a feminist rant here or anything like that, but we're different. Men, women, we're different, but we should also be treated equally at the end of the day. But like what Sameera said, if that happened to a guy, it would get brushed off. No one would even think twice. It's fine. It's a guy. It's the boy. It's all good. But yeah, I'm keen to understand why is it that the women or the girls get the brunt of it actually, and the self-respect goes down, self-confidence goes down, the shame, what will Ma say, what will my dad say, what will the family say, what will the community say, all of that. I mean, it should really be, if a woman is ever in a situation like that, I would always say to hold your head high, because and understand that whatever happened was in a very intimate, and it was in a consenting situation where both parties had agreed to that. And if bitterness and the ego took over and wanted to tear down this woman's self-respect, the person in fact, who's been impacted by this should, I hope, have that strong community around her to be able to sort of hold her and, also be able to guide her through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really important, to have your
100%.
tribe of women around you
Mhm.
to support you. Because look, people are going to want to tear down that situation, that individual, perhaps the family. And there's some people who just want to, just thrive off it. It would be like, sending meat into a hungry den of lions. But you definitely need to be able to hold your own self-respect and say, well, this happens. I mean, it's not like I'm the only person or the only woman that's happened to, for example. There's so many women who've gone through this.
Absolutely.
Going through. And I think people forget that. And you can't just target that one individual. And you can't target a group of individuals, which is, like you said, it's women in this moment of time in this conversation. So how to prevent it? I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, it's why would someone do that is the question. It's the ego has been dented, perhaps male ego. I don't know. If I'm generalizing by making that statement. But please jump in. Jagesh, do you have anything? I'd love to hear about your comments, actually, because of your experience in mental health and things, and if you've come across any of this or any of these stories.
Yeah, definitely. I think like you touched on that, like that ego thing, and like I can't speak for like all guys, but I know it's like the thing for like brown men in particular. They have this like massive ego sometimes that they're either really proud of or they don't know they have it, and like they they either want to protect it or they hate when it gets out, or they'll do something to make sure other people know about it too. And it's about that point as well, that some of you said earlier, that it's not up to women to call out men's behavior. It should be on guys to call out men's behavior. So we don't have to be, we shouldn't be babysitted, but we are about when this happens. So it needs to be on men to call out other guys. So we're the issue, we have to be the solution to supporting other men as well. And I kind of like just want to go back to that point Sameera talked about before, when she talked about parents having these discussions with children. Like I know my parents had like discussions with me about respect, like when I was younger, but it wasn't specific in a way that we need to talk about like misogyny. And I know for parents as well, that's quite hard to bring up sometimes, especially with South Asian parents. We're very much like, we don't talk about sex or drugs. It's only when something happens that we may talk about it. In saying that as well, there's probably a lot of like different perspectives. So what I kind of wanted to know from the group as well is like, how would you as a parent have those specific conversations with your children? Do you wait for something to happen, or do you have those discussions knowing that you want to set your children up for independence and that later?
I don't have kids, but this is something that my parents did that I'm very, very grateful for, is the conversation around, you don't have to be ashamed if anything happens. You just need to come talk to us. So there was that very blanket conversation around, you don't have to be ashamed of anything. Do not be scared, come talk to us. We would rather you come tell us than we find out from someone else. So, you know, growing up, I know a lot of my girlfriends did not have those conversations. And if they stepped a toe out of line, it was, you know, you'll be sent back to wherever. And I grew up here for context. It was always like, oh, my parents will send me back or they'll get me married and all of that kind of stuff, especially the South Asian girls. So, you know, I was very grateful in that way. And I think that parents need to start having those kind of conversations with their girls. And also, I think parents should stop. I think, you know, with a lot of South Asian men, I think parents kind of brush it under the rug and let it go when it's something like this. And it's kind of like, no, but in our family, these are not our family values. Hence, he didn't do it, or it was one mistake. Let's not make excuses. Let's start to teach men from a younger age that they're equally responsible and to understand consent. And I think the other thing for me also is I don't know what schools are doing around revenge porn. When I was in school, there was nothing. We had cell phones with, you know, cameras, etc. So revenge porn was a real thing even then. However, there wasn't anything in that school space in terms of awareness. And I'm not sure, Tina, you might be, you know, a little bit more, you know, you might know a little bit more in that school space if something has changed, but I think it's critical that schools do get involved and start to educate students around this.
Yeah, I don't think I would wait personally. Like, I've got a 3.5-year-old, she's still a little baby. But, you know, believe it or not, I've actually started to tell her in sort of for her to understand that if she's not comfortable with something, she doesn't have to do it. If she doesn't want someone to play with her, share her toys, even touch her or give her a hug, she doesn't have to. I'm actually teaching her consent at this age, believe it or not, moving forward. And growing up, as she gets older, I don't think I would wait for it to happen. I would probably probe conversations. It could be even if you're watching TV or something came up in the news or a topic that she's raised or she's seen, she wants to discuss. I'd probably have that conversation and probe my daughter. But if I had a son, I would probably definitely want to teach early on by example, not just pulling it out of a book and looking at hey, you know, this happened today in the news, I want you to know. But it would just be like, as I would with my own daughter, absolutely equally, but teach them by example. And same with my daughter as well, teaching her by example. Like, what she sees is how she's going to understand this is what is meant to be right. This is the way we're supposed to be doing things, right? Or this is how we're supposed to be respecting people and speaking to people and whatnot. Similarly, if I had a boy, I'd be doing exactly the same. I know with friends of mine who have boys, I asked a similar question just to get, you know, perspective. And some of my friends have said, I would want to teach my boys feminism, like very lightly feminism, like the importance of treating women equally, that they are our equal counterparts. Yes, we're different. So it was quite interesting getting that sort of feedback actually, and understanding how they would help their boys evolve. And also emotional EQ came up. I think this is something in our culture we really need to focus. It might be a different topic, 100%. I don't know, for discussion, but this stuff really gets me excited. I think emotional EQ is really important. I think actually some of the stuff, like with sexism, I think it's such a huge topic, but there's an aspect, like you say, this online misogyny, I think toxic masculinity, empathy, and even emotional EQ. These all play a big part in all of this. In my opinion, just as we're having this discussion, and to be able to understand and teach them that being expressive and being able to talk about things, not just about this topic, about how they're going, how they're feeling, if there's internal things that they want to discuss, to be able to let it out, because those frustrations you see can build up. Jagesh, this is probably right up your alley. So, but yeah, it's definitely something I would be discussing with my children for sure. I wouldn't wait for something to happen. Definitely not. And if something did happen, I'd like to talk about it. Like, this is what's happening, and, you know, to make sure that they're okay if there's anything they want to be discussing and raising.
Yeah, there's this idea though, and Mehak has alluded to this, and I think it's really important because a lot of these incidents that we're seeing, especially in Melbourne, are happening at private boys' schools, or they're happening at very educated schools which have the best resources, the best access to knowledge per se. And Mehek asks, we know these young men are educated, even from select schools sometimes. So is there really an education piece missing or something else? Jagesh, I'm going to direct that to you.
I think I don't think with like the select schools or private schools, I think it's regardless of what school you go to, this still happens. So it's not always on the school to teach respect, and when schools do it, it's kind of in that reactive way as well. So you're gonna have like kids coming from primary schools into these like different schools, but I think it goes back to, it starts in what type of social environments you're brought up in. So when you were growing up, what did you see on TV? What did your mates talk about? What did you see on the internet? And like social media now, it's so easy for like a 10, 12-year-old to get into. So what of your social construct is shaped from your own, and what is shaped from those around you? And I think that's where that education piece comes from. So, and it's really hard as well for I know, for parents and guardian figures to kind of like guard their kids or make them safe. We can only do it so much. So, because we know they're going to go to like extracurricular activities as well. So whether it be like sport or hobbies or like after school or hanging at a mate's house, you don't know what they got up to. And like, this is everyone, like the quintessential answer when your kid comes back from home, like, how was school or how's your mates? It's like, yeah, it was good. There's no like standing on that.
Yeah.
So
Guilty.
and I think when Maria Datil, she raised this point, it's what happens in the silence. It's what we don't know about. It's what happens in the shadows. So these conversations, we can do as much as we want to like stem these conversations in school as an educational piece. But it's that like 90% we don't know what's going on. Now, unless our kids, our mates talk to us about it, how are we supposed to prevent something that we don't know is going to happen?
Yeah, totally. And it's important as well, like, I think generation to generation, younger generations especially have new ways of doing things, right? So in the past generation, their misogyny and sexism, unfortunately, was a particular type of way, maybe more catcalling or, in your face. Whereas with our generation, it's become something online and, through sharing of photos and
or a mix
comments.
of both.
Mix of both, yeah, probably, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely evolved, and
So looking at the I guess the evolution on the online space, what can social media companies do as well? Do you think they can play a particular role in, I guess, stamping out this misogyny and abuse and sexism? Sameera, I'll point that to you.
I actually have a huge gripe with Instagram on this one, because I'm one of those people who goes and reports things where I see sexism, or I see some, blatant kind of misogynistic comments or memes, if you will. And I think that social media agencies are not doing nearly enough as they could. Women's bodies are constantly being regulated on social media. So on Instagram, for instance, there's that whole thing where, if a woman's certain body part is showing, the photo or the image will get deleted. However, when it comes to this kind of commentary and sort of obvious blatant misogyny, Instagram has done absolutely nothing about it, where it comes to filters, where it comes to even trigger warnings or anything. In fact, they don't even take some of that content down when you report it. I would say 98% of the content that I have reported has not been taken down. And so I just feel like Instagram, a lot of these social media agencies are kind of just focusing on women specifically, women's bodies specifically, and more of that notion of, we don't want too much sexual content on there, or women's bodies being too sexualized, for instance. And they're focusing on that, whereas we're leaving all of this other room for all of this conversation about misogyny and sexism, which is going completely unchecked. And there is a lot of it on Instagram specifically. I don't use Facebook as much anymore, but I think Instagram needs to at least lift its game on this one.
You
really
can have
does.
fake profiles on Instagram as well. This
Absolutely.
Is the thing. Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, you can say what you want on there, to be honest, and it's all
Absolutely.
free.
And
Like, you can
Instagram
go
influence,
crazy if you want to, and no one
yeah,
would know who you are.
and
It's
so many
scary.
Instagram
Yeah.
influencers call out, this misogynist content in their DMs, where it consists of, sending, unsolicited pictures of your genitalia, or, rape threats, death threats, the immense slut shaming that happens on some of this, for some of these women, especially South Asian women, mostly. And nothing gets done. There's one of the actual social media influencers actually came out and talked about how in her DMs there is just so much, death and rape threats. Her Instagram doesn't allow her to even filter it properly, so they're at the top of her DMs all the time. And I think,
Wow.
stuff like that can really be changed, and it's in the hands of Instagram to be able to initiate some of that and actually demonstrate that, they're saying no to things like online bullying, slut shaming, and misogyny.
Well, online bullying, funny you mentioned that, Sameera. The ABC yesterday, I think it was, has said since pandemic, online bullying, cyberbullying has gone up by about 60%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this Manosphere, this concept that was new, and I was doing some research as well when I was invited to this. There's so much information out there. There's this thing called the Manosphere, and they're basically talking about technology, like online misogyny, like the platforms that men can use, and they're actually creating these groups, like, to actually, like, pull out and target this sort of behavior, like, and I mean, not target, like, egg it on, like, facilitate it. So it's pretty scary, actually, what's going on. Yeah.
So we've got another comment from Swati here. Swati saying the change starts with men making more of an effort to use their privilege in calling things out and taking the onus off women to educate. We shouldn't have to have such a major call out on a public forum, just to ask for basic respect. Yeah, and I think that's definitely true. I think as a man, and Jagesh as well, definitely the onus is on us. And I think Jagesh mentioned it as well. We wanted to have this conversation before, but then we thought, okay, it's important to have women also talking and just hearing their experiences. But then at the end of the day, yes, the onus is definitely on us. I think if we hear these stories, if we humanize these stories, it's unfortunate that we needed Miss Universe Australia to, tell us her story for us to open our eyes. We should have definitely done this before, because it happens to so many women. But I think this idea, Jagesh, you said, calling out your mates and your friends. We know that people, when they have these private chat groups or when they're alone, they have these frank conversations. So if I was to call out a mate, can you give me like a few ways of doing that, so that I can almost teach that person, but also not seem like, I'm losing a friend or something, or how should I go about giving advice to somebody in that situation?
I think it's difficult, but it's also like it's something that can be done. Like, first off, I think you should have that discussion with your mate one-on-one, or another great way of doing it is share your concerns with one of your other friends and say, hey, this is like, you know who's doing this. Could you support me in kind of having this discussion with like one of our other good mates, so you're not the only one doing it with you. And in that hope, one of your other mates does see where you're coming from. So, and he can kind of act as a mediator. So you've got someone there who's kind of on both sides, but also knows you're trying to get a point across. And I think it's good to kind of like message that mate first and say like, hey fam, I think we need to talk about like this is kind of like bothering me. Let's catch up like over a drink, or like let's catch up one-on-one. And like guys, I think it's like really easy to be like, yeah, cool, like let's have a chat, and kind of having that in a frank discussion, but in a private setting, because doing it in front of like all your other mates is quite it'd be quite hard to do that. But if you do it in like a private setting, or somewhere where you both feel comfortable, in an environment where you can do that, I think that'd be easy, like really easy. And I think you'd start that discussion with saying like, hey, I noticed you commented on this, for example, but in a really crude way. I think there's better ways you could have like handled that, or I think it's better to not like just not make a comment. And if like I kind of went back to this point before, is that if they really are your mates, they'll understand where you're coming from, because they know long term you both don't want to see that friendship go away. But like on the opposite side too, there's going to be times where you can make your point as much as you want, but your friends or people you thought you were friends aren't going to get it. And I think that's when it comes to a crucial point of, well, do I want to stay friends with this person? Like uplifting me, and does he share like similar values to what I feel? So you're gonna have those tough discussions at some point where you have to kind of like cut away some of your friends, and then keep the ones you think are going to support you and support others in the long run.
And you, I know you've made some changes to a few of your groups, I guess privacy and also I guess what you call them terms or conditions. Can you quickly touch on that?
Yeah, what I've seen is really good, and a couple of kind of advocacy groups I've been a part of have, because of, and again, like this is reactive, which is also bad, but it starts a conversation as well. After like Maria's post, is having a clear statement of, we won't be tolerating like misogynistic behavior like this. And what I've seen is that we want the community to message us privately and let us know, hey, I've heard these conversations going on, or a guy I know in this group has been messaging me inappropriately. Could you please take some action? And that's where groups need to start taking action and say, yes, of course, we're going to investigate this, either by kicking that person out of the group and investigating what's going on. Because what I've seen as well is that other groups or other societies have made these like statements saying we won't tolerate misogyny. But what I want to come back to is that actions speak louder than words. So you can have these full statements, but we're just gonna, if they're just gonna go over your head and you're gonna tell like your Facebook community, hey, we really care about this, but when it comes to it, you don't actually do anything. How are you supporting the community? So like for example, earlier today, like on Shakti, we made a post that specifically talked about this, and it was called Dear Brown Man, and it's talking about misogyny in the South Asian community, specifically for men, because we haven't seen men come out and say this is wrong. We've seen women, allies, the community come out and say this is wrong, but we haven't seen men come out and say this is wrong, we need to do something about it. So if you were in these groups and someone does come to you and say, this has been happening, or I've seen this person in this group saying stuff in another group, you need to investigate it, and you need to show you're supporting your community members and supporting your audience.
Great, really awesome. Jaya brought up this point. We spoke about it before, but if quickly, I guess Sameera or Tina, if you would want to answer this. So what do you think is the influence of easy access to porn on these relationships?
I'm just unclear about the question on what kind of relationship. I'm not sure porn is something that I would hold responsible for it. Porn has been available through generations, and it has been as easily accessible as it could be. I don't see, porn being. I'm assuming she's talking about revenge porn here. When I'm assuming, I might be getting the question wrong.
It could be. I remember how previously we were speaking about the sexualization, I guess, of society, porn, easy access to porn, people saying, well, look at our society, it's so sexualized. How does this influence guys talking
the
like
only
this?
thing that I will say about porn is women who are in pornographic films and on websites like OnlyFans are consenting to do that. They are doing it for an audience where they are feeling safe. They're getting paid to do that. That is like an occupation for them, and sex work is work. So, we can't necessarily use porn as an excuse, because there is that, reality versus fantasy. What you see in porn is fantasy. What is happening to that woman is completely 100% consensual, right? And I think I don't see porn really as an issue as such in this sort of and again, that whole concept of, oh, it's because we're over sexualizing. No, you're missing the point. You're not understanding the fine line between where it's sexualizing without consent and sexualized with consent, and a woman who is comfortable with her body, who's comfortable in her skin and doing what she wants to do, in a space that she considered safe for an audience that she considers safe. Sorry, that's
Tina, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I agree with what Sameera was saying. Actually, it's in a completely it's in an environment with consent. I think people tend to use porn more as I don't know, weapon or tool, if you like, but it's preference. That's all I can say. I mean, everyone's got preference to what they like and what they don't like. But yeah. How do you encourage men?
Great. So we have a question from Asmita. How do we encourage men to partake in these discussions or even watch talks on topics such as this one? So yeah, how do we get more men involved in having this discussion?
Well, to start off with, if I can say, everyone who's watching so far has been a woman that I can see in terms of the comments. Share it with a male friend, share it with a male relative, so we can, I don't know, share it on your family WhatsApp chats. They may or may not watch it, but it's a collective effort, and we all need to start somewhere. And you know, the simple things, just share it with a male in your family to begin with.
I think if something like this, obviously this particular incident that did come up, it was on the news, for example, so that would be an opening, that would be an opportunity to have a discussion that, you know, let's have a chat about what's happened, just like opening discussion, like we were talking about children. How would you introduce all of this to your kids? Similar thing with adults, if you think about it, right? Like, how would we open this conversation to male adults or to young boys? As if you see this topic come up on TV, or something's happened in a movie that you've watched and someone makes a comment, then, you know, it's an opportunity to open up and have that discussion and ask them and probe, and, you know, just open up chat really, and you know, it's just about sharing ideas and learning. I think knowledge is really important as well, actually. I think that's how you will learn, is through knowledge and education at the end of the day. And it's not about like targeting people or trying to tell someone that no, you're wrong. It's not like this, it should be like this. Why do you have thoughts about this? Why can't you be open? It's not about that. It's actually just educating one another to be more open about things, not to feel scared. And if they want to have these discussions, that, you know, we can have those discussions. And it'd be fantastic if we had more men to talk about this, to be honest. I mean, it's fantastic you guys are doing this, to be honest with you. Like, it's been great. Yeah, it's been really, really great.
I agree with Tina on that.
Awesome. Swati, also, thank you so much for contributing. Why does it take women calling out? Have we answered this? Okay, maybe not. Why does it take women calling out this behavior and having to get momentum like Maria Thattel did, just for men to take this seriously? Also, we need to stop babying men. This gen, we're educated here and can do better.
I think we touched on it before. It was about that babying men, that point of men need to call out other men in making sure that you're having these discussions. And that comment before, that was about how do we encourage men to partake in discussions. I think a good point is having like a kind of casual like men's group where it's just guys talking about something that they need to open up about, or having, what could also kind of work is like having like a girlfriend there, or a partner of someone, or one of the girlfriends that, or the guy that they're comfortable talking about this with. Because to be frank, men don't like bringing these conversations up, so they kind of need someone sometimes to get the ball rolling. But you have it in a space where guys are going to feel comfortable doing these conversations, but they're going to go away learning something from it as well. So they can have those conversations with like their kids when it comes to time, or having the conversations with their fathers when it comes to time too. As this going forward, we want to have these conversations. sometimes we need to teach like our like fathers or grandparents as well, hey, this is really important to have conversations about this.
100%. It's that leading with empathy. I 100% agree with you on that. And I think there is that bit that we need to, I guess, understand that, you know, the fact that we're babying men right now is also because of this social construct in South Asian communities where men have been taught to, you know, you're the provider, you need to be strong, you can't show emotion, otherwise you're not good enough or you're not a man. So those are the social constructs around men, which is, you know, if you compare it to women, yes, women have it a lot harder. However, we need to break that down from the generation down. So it's really about starting those conversations with the grandparents and the dads, but leading also with empathy, because, you know, that's something that they've known for most of their lives, and it's a gradual change process.
Breaking the cycle. Yeah, breaking the cycle.
Absolutely.
You need to nip it. Yeah.
We've got a slightly different question, but I guess it's still talking towards the issue of like women's rights. Taliban advancing in Afghanistan means gradual crushing of all women's rights in that country. How do we then liberate women who are not in a privileged position? And I'll probably expand on that question as well. How do we, how do we stand up for women who, even in our own communities, are not in a privileged position as well, or who don't have the ability to have a platform or speak up, or that community that understands them? If anyone would like to.
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. I think for me, the way I look at it, I've had a very privileged upbringing. I'm very fortunate to have parents who've always been, you know, massively supportive. And so I haven't faced too many sort of South Asian, you know, I haven't faced too many issues in terms of that. And for me, the important thing is that because I have that place of privilege, I keep voicing things. They may not relate to what I've experienced, but I keep voicing them because I know that someone somewhere, it's going to be impacting them. It's going to raise awareness for them. So for me, it's to continue using my voice on, you know, women's pages, on my social media platforms, donating to causes that you believe in. Advocacy goes a really long way, and you can do small steps to really kind of get the message out there, especially if you're a woman who is in that privileged position.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Sameera. We're nearly coming to the end of the show, so I'm going to be wrapping up with a few final thoughts from you all, but also feel free to plug any, women rights advocacy groups or any petitions, any initiatives that we can do as well in your final wrap up. So we'll start off with Tina, and your final thoughts and any words of wisdom finally before we leave.
Words of wisdom. No words of wisdom, but I think it's great that we've actually had an opportunity to be on this platform actually and to be able to discuss this. And I think what we've raised have been some really key points. And I think the couple of the key points is really to have those discussions with men as well about what's happening, and try and get them on board a bit more, I think, and educating. When I use the term educating, at least, you know, sharing knowledge, experiences, if you know anyone or have gone through it yourself, so that you can, you know, use your privilege, like Sameera said, to help others understand that. If you see something that you're not happy about, definitely take a stand. I mean, you know, and also role modeling. Role modeling is really important. Like for me, it definitely is something that we're focusing on, my husband and I, with raising our little girl, and setting an example really by that. And and it definitely, I do believe it starts at home, and I think environments are definitely impacting, you know, how young boys are basically growing up, and how misogyny is slowly sort of creeping in to our communities and becoming bigger, really. Yeah.
Thank you for that, and thanks so much for all your words of wisdom throughout. Sameera, final thoughts?
Thank you. Well, thank you for facilitating this really important discussion. And it's really great to have, someone like Jagesh in the room who's really sort of that advocate for mental health as well. And thank you for also taking through how men can start to talk to other men. I think that's really critical. For me, the sort of final messaging that I will kind of say is if someone's out there and they're listening, if you're going through something and you cannot talk to your parents, there are mental health institutions out there that can help you. There are free sort of, I can get some links later put in. There's SouthAsianTherapist.org that you can go to if you're looking at a specific South Asian therapist that can help you. But please work through it. Please talk to someone. Don't feel like you're alone. These are important things to talk about. And I'd really like to hear from more men, especially older men, people over 50. I'd love to hear from more older men about how this is not impacting them and how they can make a difference. So hopefully in future, we'll see more participation.
Great. Thanks so much, Sameera. And thank you as well for all your thoughts throughout. Jagesh, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think guys, we need to do better. Like, it's not really good enough anymore to be bystanders. Like, we really pull up. We really need to do better in terms of advocating for equality, advocating to stop misogyny in our chats. And there's so many ways I think we can do. What I want people and men, especially if they are listening, to take away from this is kind of have a think about what behaviors have you shown in the past that you can kind of work on? Because I know all men, me included, we've got so much to work on still. So what behaviors have you kind of regretted that you now reflect and be like, I could have handled that a better way? And then going forward, what's one thing you're going to do to support your mates or support women as well if you see something happen? So don't be afraid to call something out. And if you need support with that, talk to the people around you who are going to support you to have those conversations.
We think Oz might be stuck.
I think Oz is there. I think he just moved.
Oh no, he's moving now because we thought he was stuck.
Or am I stuck?
But yeah, lastly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me today, and Oz, thank you for facilitating discussion. Really needed, and I hope we can start having better discussions from this as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the people in the comment section. Thank you to all who were listening, and thank you to Saleha for facilitating and also putting this amazing platform on of Chai Chat and community. We get to speak about such amazing topics and really important initiatives that we face in the South Asian community. And I would just like to say, as men, we do need to do better. And even me in the past as well, was just hearing these stories, feeling so guilty of how I used to talk in the past or mistakes I've made. And it's so important to be educated and hear from our fellow sisters and our fellow brothers on how we can do better. So thank you all. And I hope this has helped, and hopefully we can do better. Thanks everyone. Have a good Sunday night, and